Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Project Positive Planet, Week 3. Today we will be focusing on the future of sanitation, technology, and security in hospitality. Joining us, we have Hamid, Bhatti, Director of Elcatron Hospitality Limited, Bill Lally, President of Mode Green, Bill Taylor, co-founder of Wellness Resorts International, and me, Stephanie Rust, founder of We Consulting and Caribbean We. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Thanks, Steph. How are you?
How are you this afternoon?
Excellent.
Good, good. So I will start at the top right. And Bill Lally, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Steph. My name is Bill Lally, as Steph mentioned. I own a company called Mode Green. We specialize in hospitality technology integration for audiovisual systems, energy management, lighting controls, and various design and consulting services associated with technology in the hotel space.
Awesome. And Hamid, do you want to go next? Oh, can't hear you. Can you talk? Okay, we'll go to Bill Taylor while you figure out your microphone. Bill?
Hello, everyone. First, Stephanie, thanks for having me on today. Bill, it's good to see you again as well.
You too.
First off, I have a company called Wellness Resorts International. We're doing wellness-related resorts basically all over the Caribbean and clinics. Trade-wise, I'm an architect, developer, and building guy, and I wanted to, jump on with this group today because I'm starting to get a lot of calls from resorts that I've built across the Caribbean and across the country, and address some of the needs that we're all going to be facing in the future.
Wonderful. Hamid, do you have? Still can't hear you. Okay. All right. Maybe jump off and jump back on and see if that'll fix it. Okay. First question for you, Bill Taylor. Do you want to talk about some of the protocols that you are putting in place and properties that are reaching out to you for sanitation purposes?
Absolutely. First off, let's go back in time. 1976, there was a disease that hit our industry as far as hospitality called Legionnaires in Chicago. And we've actually had several incidents of that since that time. This is what we're dealing with today is this times 100. In my life, I like to look at things with the glass half full versus half empty. And, what we need to do is concentrate on getting our resorts clean, sanitized, and open. And there's a program for that. Obviously, we can hire anybody, we being collective group on this call, to come in and do cleaning and sanitation and everything. The bigger challenge is what do you do after that? How do you make sure that somebody coming in as a guest once tourism opens up again is not infecting your building, and the money that you just spent to clean your resort does not go by the wayside. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I have, thought about this a whole lot. This is, again, this whole pandemic is nothing that any of us have ever seen. So, we have to keep asking the questions and keep solving the problems and try and help our brothers and sisters that are running resorts and hospitality when the time comes for people to be able to travel again, be able to get folks in their resorts, start building the economy up, and make sure it's a safe environment for everyone.
Great. Hamid, you're back with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now we can hear
All
you.
right. Sorry.
Tell the group about yourself and
Yeah.
awesome.
So I'm Hamid from Bahamas. Primarily, I'm involved with hospitality access control systems, energy management systems, and key control. Been in business since about 2007, and I cover all the islands in the Bahamas from Freeport all the way down to Anagua.
Fabulous. Okay, guys. Sorry, we had some people pre-register and we had an issue with the link, so I'm going back and forth. Bill Taylor, so tell us a little bit about technology, what trends you're seeing, and how you think it'll play into the world after we reopen and get started again.
Okay. Well, first off, look at it like this. In any situation, when you hire a company that would come in and clean out a virus or clean out mold or anything like that, that would be in any sort of air conditioning system, there's been, what we have all, come used to as protocol, right? So basically, there's 5 levels of cleaning in any sort of building, and whether it's your own home or whether it is a hotel that is really big and has a casino and a bunch of public areas and restaurants and shops and things like that. It really depends on what size of area that you're dealing with. Most of the hotels that I have been talking to, or resorts that I've been talking to, they're pretty much what I call a level 3 type of cleaning. And in that, basically, you're getting everything in your mechanical systems cleaned. In other words, your air ducts and everything that is related to something that you would breathe in while being in the room. You're getting everything wiped down, mopped, and all of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, you could literally shut the door and everything be cleaned, and you would get a certificate for that. When you get into the larger facilities, where you're talking about uh, spaces that have, decorative things like books and all kinds of art and stuff like that, that becomes a different issue, and especially in casinos. If you can imagine going into a casino and how many people walk into a casino every day, and are there 8 to 10 hours, and they're touching everything, and there's populations that are international that feed all of these businesses. You're going to have a different level of cleaning. So when I started thinking about this, I started thinking about, okay, if the perfect scenario for anybody coming in that would clean a facility like this would be to have the whole thing empty, right? Nobody's there. They go in, they clean every room, they clean everything, and everything's wonderful. The problem is that you're still dealing with people that are working there that you have to test. And what I came up with was, okay, let's make sure that we've got doctors that are there that can shoot a thermometer on your head and check you out, and you're in booties, you're in headgear, you're in gloves, all of that kind of stuff every day. Now, that's just for your workers. And what I've been trying to help with all of our resort people that I've talked to is, you've got anywhere from 250 to 5,000 employees that have no jobs right now because the resorts are not open. So can we come in and help somebody learn how to clean a surface? Yes. So that gives them a job. Do we need to check them every day? Yes. Do we need to, in the future, have a doctor or doctors that are there that are checking people in and just asking simple questions, a questionnaire of, have you been around anybody, your temperature's fine, you look fine, whatever. But you need to be able to have those precautions in place where if somebody came in and they did have the virus and you didn't know it or they didn't know it, one of the things that I have suggested is a quarantine wing, if you will. So if you had somebody come in and all of a sudden you figured out they have the they have the virus, they have something going on that might look like that. You don't throw them out the door, but at the same time you protect all your other guests. So we have to take everything on a case-by-case basis with regards to resorts. We have to, look at the size of the resort. We have to look at the mechanical systems. We have to, see what public spaces they have, and then go from there and tailor a program for them. But really, the guts of everything is not only cleaning up what we have right now, but also moving forward in a protective nature where on your website, if you're a resort hotel owner, you can say, hey, we got this certificate and we are following these protocols. And we are going to make sure that whether it's now or whether it's in the future, you're going to be protected. And that's really where moving forward with the technical side of cleaning and everything for resorts, that's what we have to do.
Interesting. I know a lot of the larger chains are already coming out with their, I think Marriott and Acorn and a few others and their sanitation policies.
Right. And I would tell you this, they all have, I've looked at them and, everybody has, great ideas and great intentions. They're all trying to keep guests safe and employees safe and things like that, which is what we would all obviously want for everyone. I would say this, that if, if this thing keeps molding as what we all hear on news media every day, which I can barely watch the news anymore for listening to how bad they think it may get. I would say that the best thing to do is practice what we're preaching, and let's make sure that everybody that comes in is clean. If we have people that are employees that have symptoms, let's help them. Let's worry about the things day to day, but we can't just shut the doors, if you will. We've got to move forward in a positive direction, because so many of these countries, especially the Bahamas, are tourism dependent. And we've got to be able to open those doors back up, keep it safe. And I think that if we can all as an industry think about that, we'll be in a much, much better place than we are right now.
Very good. Bill Lally.
Too many bills on this call.
No, I just hired a guy named Bill too. It's caused all sorts of internal chaos for us.
Yeah, with Bahamas with us.
Right.
So, question for you: technology.
Yep.
What trends are you seeing? How will it play into the future with hospitality moving forward? What are your thoughts?
It's going to be interesting. I think Hamid and I are in somewhat complementary businesses, and we're probably seeing a lot of the same things. Where looking at what we do, we supply light switches, thermostats, door locks, all high-touch items. So it's things that I don't know how diligent housekeepers are about cleaning a thermostat or a light switch every time they go in a room, and it's going to completely cause for a rethink of how these rooms get cleaned. So those are devices that are the most common things that you're going to touch, are the entry door switch and a thermostat in a room. And how do we make sure that those are kept up with protocol and that those all become part of the cleaning process of a room on an ongoing basis? So I think it's really amazing the nuts and bolts of all this that has to come together as far as what has to change from normal practices and what's going to make people comfortable. Outside the guest room, we're seeing obviously all conventions shut down, all meetings shut down. All of that is completely done for the time being. And so we're working with hotels now on rethinking how do we take advantage of the fact that their occupancy may be down for quite a while, and are there ways that we can create isolated meeting rooms or Zoom rooms or something like that out of guest rooms, and keeping those rooms from being, as opposed to a group sales standpoint, to being an individual place that somebody can go and work out of their house, so they don't have a dog barking or a kid crying in the background when they got to get on a video call, for example. So hotels are well equipped for that. I mean, almost like a WeWork kind of model in some instances, where they already have, as they get back in action, daily housekeeping, daily food service. It gives them a chance to create and get creative with new revenue streams, so that they're taking advantage of these isolated guest rooms that could now be maybe an isolated, conference room or something like that. I think as travel starts to ramp back up, we're not going to see the large 1,000-person conventions filling ballrooms. It's going to be maybe the board of directors goes and meets. And are there ways that we can, through technology, create streaming services for them, or just like we're doing now, some kind of webinars that the company can see what's going on. They can have their board meeting in an isolated sort of, small group environment, but still be able to engage the rest of those around them, as opposed to bringing them all in for large scale conventions. So we're really
That's
trying to figure out.
I hadn't heard that idea.
Yeah, so with some of what we're working on now, it's just a matter of how do we get creative, both from a revenue generating standpoint, is obviously everybody's hurting for that right now, and also being smart and safe about how we do that and taking advantage of the technologies that are available. And I think if anything good has come out of all this, it's that people have gotten very good about figuring out how to work from home, how to use Zoom, how to use Teams, all these different technologies that have existed, but haven't been entirely necessary when you're all working in the same office building. So we're trying to take that same concept and adapt it into the hospitality space. Obviously, it's different rule sets. You're working with the Marriotts of the world and their network standards and security policies, and it's a lot of navigation through that to make sure that what we're implementing is actually safe and secure, not just from a viral standpoint, but also from a network security standpoint for some of these customers that we're dealing with. So it allows them to create more isolated options for incoming guests or for meetings as they get back in action, that aren't going to be the large scale things, but are able to still, like I said, generate revenue and do it in a safe environment.
Has there been any talk of reinventing convention space or repurposing? Have you had any of those conversations?
Sort of. We just finished a large renovation at a hotel in Pentagon City, right out in Washington, D.C. And we put a lot of this technology in place, but for the purposes of large scale meetings. Maybe, yeah. So they are now looking at how do we take this technology we just implemented and using it almost as a test case for Ritz and Marriott to figure out what do we do moving forward with what we've just invested in, again, to generate revenue that's not going to be these large scale places. So it's everything. It's meetings, it's weddings, it's all of these things that were happening on a large scale basis, that I think it's going to be quite some time, even with proper cleaning policies in place, just from a social comfort standpoint. And people, everybody's sort of shell shocked right now, and everybody, you look around, and I live in New York, and it's the hotbed of all of this, and you almost look around like everybody's your enemy. Like, do you have it? You're going to get sick. It's a very, very, very strange mindset, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take quite a while for people just to get out of the shell shocked mentality of being comfortable being around other people and not knowing, is that guy going to make me sick, or can I, whatever that might be. It's very, very interesting, and it's not something I think anybody's experienced before, and so much is unpredictable. And at the same time, we have to be smart about engaging how we get back into action, because if we do it wrong, we're just going to be taking 10 steps backwards and just escalating that fear factor.
Right. Hamid, from a security standpoint, what are your thoughts?
Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can.
All right.
The breeze on Earth Day. It's beautiful in the Bahamas. Frangipani behind you.
So it was interesting. I had a conference call this morning with one of my suppliers for Moore's Watchman, and so Moore's Watchman is an automated key box. So we talked about a bunch of different things. Security came up for VPN and cloud-based access. And so that's being scrutinized a lot more now, since everybody's at home and everybody's on their machines. So that came into play. Not so much, though, because they already had the standards in place. When it comes to the technology side, on that point, I think everybody's aware. When it comes to physical security inside the properties, uh, security is still there. I mean, so the risk is quite low and there's no occupancy. I think, um, like Bill mentioned earlier, the number one concern are the high touch um, areas and devices. And so for me, everything that I supply is high touch. The locks, the doors, the key watcher especially. I mean, if you take a Bahamar, I mean, Bahamar has, I think, it's almost 4,000 employees, if not more, and a lot of them are housekeepers. So you imagine you have one device that 1,200 people touch a day, and it's all biometric or fingerprint access. So now we're having to go through and reevaluate if we're going to stick with fingerprint in lieu of, an RF card touch or using facial recognition to grant access. But
Will you talk a little bit about that technology? Because that was interesting to me. The phone check-in and facial recognition.
Yeah. So from the Asa Abloy hospitality side, you have a choice how to gain room entry. You can use a mobile key, which is was supposed to be standard for Marriott by the end of this year. I doubt that's going to happen anymore. But the idea is you check in online and you receive an encrypted key to your mobile app. That key is not active until you check in. Then you're assigned a room, and now you can go to your room using your mobile key. So in that way, it's completely sort of hands-free, touchless. You actually don't even have to interact with front desk at all. The property will know that you're there. You can check in on the app, so it knows that you're there, and then the room assignment goes directly to the app. The app notifies you that your room's ready and which room number that is, and then you go to your room. So from that standpoint, and that's been available for some time. It hasn't been used in a lot of the properties or utilized, but I think now it definitely will be. Just having limited contact with front desk sort of mitigates a lot of the risk. And so a lot of the risk assessment that hotels are going through right now include that. How do you minimize unnecessary contact using technology? There's certain things you can't limit. I mean, if you have 15 people at the pool, it's kind of tough to say, or 50 people, it's kind of tough to say, you have to use some social distancing. But when it comes to technology, there's definitely things that can be done. Even down to the metal on the door handles. ASA has a grade of door hardware that they specifically use in hospitals that resist bacteria. And I think it's a silver-based metal that they use. It's not going to kill a virus, but it definitely reduces the amount of time that a virus can live on the metal. So you still have to go through the cleaning process and everything else, but anything is better than what we have now. So my opinion is a lot of across the board, hotels, hospitals, MDUs, assisted living, student housing, they're all gonna rethink and have to rethink how they can use technology and hardware to kind of reduce some of the likelihood of a spread. And bear in mind, this is just one outbreak, and one it's just COVID-19. Now people are starting to think about the next one and what that's going to look like. So HEPA filters, UV lights have come up a lot, especially when it comes to in-room cleaning across the board. Negative air pressure rooms, and even we talked about this in the last conference, the spray-on solvent.
Oh, you froze.
I did?
Oh, you're back. Okay. The spray-on concept?
Yeah. And so those things have come up in quite a few calls that I've been on. Yeah, so, I mean, besides that, like Bill mentioned before, for this market, it's going to be a tough few years. And the budgets that that are going to come out are, I mean, they're going to be heavily focused on sanitation, on using technology to kind of mitigate outbreaks, containment. So I don't see a lot of money going into pure upgrades and the kind of things that I'm directly involved with. But they're going to be used to kind of mitigate the risk. Because the last thing you want is to spend a whole bunch of money and use a lot of momentum to open up a property, and then you have an outbreak a week later. So I think that's the direction that at least the customers here that they're going in.
Great, thank you. And then what about the back of the house? We've talked a lot about the front of the house, but how is this going to impact the back of the house, and what steps can we take with technology, sanitation, safety?
So we came up with an idea, at least for the Moore's Watchman side. We're going to have to use fail-proof sanitation methods for all back of the house people. You can't rely on hand washing. In any manual process, it's just not going to work. And then you also want to consider that someone may have some devious plans, and they may want to intentionally create a problem in the environment. So how do you use technology to, it's almost like a fail-safe firewall in the IT world. How do you employ technology to make sure that that can't happen, even if someone wanted to? And I think between the UV lights, forced entryways for employees in and out that are like clean rooms or decontamination areas that you have to pass through, between those two, the temperature reads as well. I mean, that's something that you can do on site. I mean, per person. But you really need to have a fail-proof way of ensuring that the hotel is a clean zone. And that's the only way it's gonna work, because there are gonna be people. I've been watching a lot of zombie movies since I've been on this lockdown. So you're gonna have a group of people who are gonna want to intentionally create chaos. I mean, it's when people get desperate and they feel like they're not getting a fair shake, and this company gets a $10 million bailout, and they can't even feed their family. People are gonna start rethinking life in general, and you've seen it. It's happening. What we thought couldn't happen in Wuhan when we were watching TV 3 months ago is now happening here. So now what we're seeing is some of those countries, what they're going through with the food shortages and the escalation in crime and sabotage and all these different things that's happening there now. That's what we're going to be up against in the next 3 to 6 months. The U.S. is a little bit more stable, because they have more resources. But
Right.
we are these islands. We depend so much on the U.S. market. We're one step away from going into pure chaos and anarchy. I mean, it's our GDP hit. There was a report that came out yesterday. Is going to be between 40 and 45%.
It's tough. I know there are a lot of people there already living on the edge. And,
yeah, and even from the hurricane from before last year, Dorian. There's tons of people who've been hurting since then. So yeah, I mean that's the challenge that we're having. So a lot of things come into play at the same time. But as far as the technology and using technology to kind of mitigate some of these risks, I think is the only fail-safe way we can do it. And UV lights have come up on a lot of different forums and calls I've been on, and sort of
UV lights, and then I've also heard about in Copenhagen they've created a self-cleaning room. I don't know if you've seen that on the trend report.
Yeah, and that concept. I mean, but
he froze.
Stephanie,
again?
I would.
Yeah, Bill Taylor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we brought up Baha Mar earlier. Let's remember, okay, first off, I worked at Baha Mar for years and understand every, gut of that building, if you will. The one thing that I would say about them is if you watch their program there, all of their employees coming into the building are wearing clothes just like we are today. And they
Right.
go into basically an underground city that is below the hotels, the two towers, if you will. And, they have the ability to get the clothes that they normally wear on a daily basis to do their job, and they're cleaned every day. And um, that is a step ahead, and probably because Baha Mar is, a little bit newer technology, if you will, because it just finished a couple of years ago. But that's a step ahead of things that we're going to be facing in this industry. And I think that the best thing that could happen as far as principles and practices and stuff like that is to look at how things are changed. There are other hotels where people wear their clothes from their house to their work site. That may be something that has to change. We may have to have a different sanitation system for employees. And again, they're no difference in importance than guests are. You have to have employees to run a resort, but what you want is everybody to be safe. But I think that the architectural designs that you're going to see coming out in the future are going to not eliminate what we're dealing with right now, but at least address what we're dealing with right now.
Okay. Bill, Lally, what do you think?
I think along those same lines, I'm just thinking that the whole, aside from the guest room cleanliness and everything else, that just the check-in process, everything, one of the biggest struggles in hospitality before all this came out was how do you incorporate, from our side of this, the technology piece again, keeping that high touch environment that have sort of made the hospitality world what it is for so long, with being greeted by a bellman, shaking hands, going to the front desk, everybody knows your name. It's this, you got the bellman that's taking another guy, you hand off, and or woman is taking your baggage to the room. So there's 3 or 4 people involved in just the process of you getting out of a car to getting to your guest room when you get to a hotel. And we have ways to automate that entire process now: mobile check-in, kiosk check-in, all of those different things. But it's been sort of a cool factor in the marketplace, but not a necessity. And I
Right.
think that the St. Regis's of the world, just to peg an easy example, that have butler service and everything else, it's been very much sort of against their brand to have something like that in place because of all those things I just mentioned, where they want, it's just it's that high touch, high class environment that is, you're being waited on hand and foot as you walk in the door. And then the technology piece, to struggle with that, going, how do you maintain that level of high touch hospitality with also balancing out what most of generations coming up now don't want to talk to anybody and just want to go straight to their room and get their key and do mobile check-in and everything else, but still maintain that level of service. And so it's been a really tough balance to strike, and a tough dynamic to figure out for these sort of ultra luxury brands. I think this is going to force that in a lot of ways, where people aren't going to be comfortable going to the person and having checked in. They're going to bring their own luggage up to the room. All of these things, it's going to be a fundamental shift in just how a guest gets greeted walking into a hotel. And yeah, technology will play a big role in that, but it also comes down to what are the new brand standards? What's the new expectation of these various luxury pieces that make up this experience that need to change as well, just in the interest of public safety.
And I tell you, from an operational standpoint, after 15 years, it would be impossible to reprogram my brain at this point of changing that. So that would be a huge learning curve and training aspect, and makes me worry a little bit about jobs as well, because hospitality is such a 1 in 10 jobs in the world are hospitality.
Yeah, and it's a huge shift, and that I just and hopefully it settles down and this goes away and everybody's fine and good. But like I said earlier, I think it's just from everybody getting used to being social again. It's a mind shift, and how do we get people comfortable and still maintain that level of hospitality, and make it, maybe it's different, that's okay, but it needs to modify in some way. And I think it's going to be a struggle for people to figure out what that is. And yeah, to your point, it may result in less staff because maybe you don't need all those people anymore. From an operational standpoint, can the hotels even afford to do that right now is another question. That's a heck of a lot of payroll to be paying to have all those people on staff.
Right.
And it's an unfortunate consequence of all this is to where do those cutbacks need to happen in order for the hotel to stay profitable and operational. And if it's a matter of cutting down the number of employees per guest room or per guest, that may be what comes of this. And most likely those are the positions that are going to be replaced in technology. And again, that's not a good thing. This is a matter of we all need to figure this out and figure out how to protect those that are working in this industry.
Mhm.
And at the same time, from a job security standpoint and taking care of their families and being able to provide, and at the same time making sure that we're doing it in a safe and productive way.
We have a question from Daphne Berlinga. She is with Oakworks, and her question is, how do they envision sanitation for rooms that will be in constant use, like a spa room? Bill Taylor?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No worries. Well, first off, a spa room is no different than any other room. You're going to have to train people that are hotel staff members on how to clean things after every use. And it's no different than if somebody was going to get a spa treatment in the United States or had their nails done or anything like that. Every time that room is used, it's going to have to be desanitized. And that doesn't mean that you're having to go in there with machines and all kinds of other things. It means a major wipe down, obviously. So maybe they're not getting, you know, 2 or 3 people in that room an hour. Maybe that means there's only one person in that room an hour, and then it takes a little bit of time to get the room cleaned up. But you're going to have to do that sort of thing. You can't just have sort of a fast food chain, if you will, where people just come in and come out and come in and come out. You can't have that. You have to take the time to desanitize it. And the biggest part of that is just educating the hotel staff on how to do that. And that's just not going in with a can of Lysol and some sort of handy wipe. It's a little bit more not difficult, but or complicated. Just a more intensive process to be able to go in and make sure that the next person coming in and laying on that bed or getting their nails done or whatever is sitting in or being in a clean environment.
And I have a question too, because, being in operations for so long, I mean, how do we test that? Like my father used to do, he was a Marine, the white glove test. But will UV lights be something we can utilize to ensure those procedures are actually happening and doing spot checks for follow-up on that?
If you're asking me, I think that everything that you can do regarding any sort of testing or checkups or anything like that is the best approach to go about. I wouldn't necessarily depend on, let's just say, one person that goes in and does that. I would say every bit of technology that we can use that Bill would know, you guys know, will be coming out or is here that can be utilized, needs to be utilized. And if we don't do that, what we're going to have is situations where we have rooms that are not clean or not safe or whatever, and that's the last thing we want. So as I say in the construction business, you measure twice and cut once when you're cutting a piece of wood. So that's the way we have to be in this. We've got to make sure we've got all the bases covered, and then we turn a room over to somebody else and they know they have a clean room to come into.
Yeah, and I think we need to learn. I mean, this gets done every day in hospitals, right? I think a lot of the
Exactly.
cleaning practices of hotels need to be following along with what's going on in hospitals. They have sick people in rooms every day that they clean and turn over to the next person that comes in with something different, that if there was something residual left in that room, it's potentially deadly to the next person. And so I think that that's really the mindset that we have to go into this with, is figuring out what those protocols are and bringing in some of those experts from the medical world and figuring out how that applies to hospitality. I don't think it's anything of reinventing the wheel. It's a matter of just doing it properly and making sure that that gets done. And I think a lot of what we see, I mean, given it's Earth Day, right, the environmental side of this is that hotels are being pushed away from single-use shampoos, single-use soaps, all these things that we see that were, again, luxury items that were seen as environmental messes because of the amount of waste it's producing. At the same time, I think we're headed right back there again because nobody wants to share the common shampoo dispenser that's on the wall now. It's a complete mind shift again on what
Right?
we were headed in one direction from an environmental standpoint, and now it's the same thing with single-use plastics. You're right back in the other direction of going, wait, don't do that, don't touch that, don't. We have to go 10 steps backward in that direction now. And so, what are the impacts of that? So, it's going to be certainly fun to figure out, right?
Well, Bill, I would also say this. One of the things that comes up when I talk to companies that do these types of services, hospital grade is actually a term in their industry. Okay, meaning we're going to make sure your rooms are hospital grade. And what you just said is right on point with exactly what they're trying to provide versus just having somebody go in, with Febreze and something like that and wiping a surface down. They are talking about hospital grade cleaning on everything that we're talking about for our industry, because really there's no difference in now with this virus, hospitality and hospitals. There really isn't.
Absolutely.
No, half the hotels I work with in the city are now hospital housing, so it's the same
Right,
story.
exactly.
It's the same place, unfortunately.
So we have another question. What are recommendations for therapist safety for those high-touch services such as massage or aesthetic? Should we look at sneeze guards at stations? That was something cool I saw traveling back from California after this really started to hit, was going into the Delta lounges, is that, okay, you no longer have your self-serve breakfast. We're going to serve you individually. Every single person in the lounge had gloves on. There was sneeze guard. Everybody was spacing out. So what are our thoughts specifically for spas with such a high touch experience? Anybody?
That's your world, Steph. Or
I
maybe
know,
Bill.
I know. Yeah.
Stephanie, I would tell you this. I think that our world is going to change differently than what we've been used to. So going to a spa 6 months ago is probably going to be different than going to a spa in 6 weeks or whenever something opens up. Okay. I would just highly recommend that everybody protect themselves. Until we get to a point where we feel like everything has curved off, if you will. But I would say that again, cleaning everything, washing your hands, all of that kind of stuff is obviously very, very important. But if you're going into a spa to get a massage, right? You may feel a rubber glove on your back or whatever versus feeling someone's hand. And there's nothing wrong with that because all they're doing is trying to keep themselves protected as well as keep you protected. And I think that like everything that's going on in the world right now, let's look at it like this, guys. I'm a big sports fanatic. There is nothing in the world of sports that is normal. Nobody knows what is going to happen, whether we're going to have a college football season, an NFL season, whatever. We don't know. So things are going to be different than the way that we have been used to. But again, just taking every precaution in everything you do is the best advice anybody can be given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've had quite a few of our previous webinars. This is constantly coming up. I think you can expect a new normal. I will say that you need to follow, our advice is, or our opinions are just opinions, and we're going to have to follow whatever our state guidelines are, federal guidelines, and your country's guidelines when that comes about. And as an individual practitioner, spa owner, spa operator, I would take it a step further. iSpa, International Spa Association, is currently has a task force, and they're coming out with SOPs, things like that. Ready Care, if you're familiar with them, they also have some SOPs already out and products, as well as universal companies. So I would take a look at all of the information out there, and you're going to have to make the best decision for your business to protect your clients, but also your staff as well. And as we get closer, I know some states are already reopening. Georgia has reopened massage, tattoo for some reason. I guess some people need some COVID tattoos.
And bowling alleys. Go figure.
And bowling alleys.
It's number one on my list for
I
reopening.
thought Florida was
Absolutely. First place to go.
Absolutely.
Georgia seems to be taking the lead. But as those things start to happen, you're going to have to make the best decision for yourself and your business. It seems that more money is being given to the SBA loans, which is great. So those are coming available. If you feel like to protect yourself and your staff, you still need to stay closed at this point. So that is that. Guys, I want to ask you, so we've talked a little bit about doom and gloom. I want Hamid to stop watching zombie movies. But what positive things do you see coming out of this for yourself, your business? There's always some type of silver lining in all of this. So I'll start with Bill Lally.
I think one of the most amazing things we've seen come out of this, just from, again, back to New York City for a minute, is these hotels that are just the most ultra luxury places in the city. The Four Seasons is on 57th Street that was featured in the New York Times is one of our best clients. Were there daily. Just decided to shell the whole place and turn it into hospital housing, just for all of those working on the front lines of the hospital, which I thought was a pretty phenomenal offering, considering the level of client they typically have. Granted, they didn't have any occupancy, but just simply the aspects of what they've done to the hotel, the cleaning they're going to have to do after the fact, but they've got full medical checkpoints at every single entrance. I know the staff well. They're still working 3 or 4 days a week to make sure that this all goes into place. So I think that just the camaraderie and people stepping up to help in this scenario and seeing what we're seeing around this area has been unbelievable. Aside from the hospitality world, there was a group in town. I live in a small town of about 10,000 people, and a woman started something called FLAG, the Frontline Appreciation Group. And the intent was to gather donations from local residents in order to continue to support the small businesses, the restaurants, the takeout, that sort of thing, and deliver it to frontline hospital workers. So in a couple of weeks, they raised over $100,000 in town with the interest of keeping the restaurants open and keeping those people employed. And they were buying the food and then delivering it themselves to the local hospitals and medical facilities. They were also recruiting the high school and the local schools to be making masks and 3D printing face guards and all sorts of other things. And this is, as of yesterday, gone into over 100 different cities in the country. So out of this woman that just had a good idea at home that lives a couple of doors down, all of a sudden it's gone into 100 chapters nationally as a complete nonprofit, and has been pretty phenomenal in watching the support that she's gotten. So yeah, so I think that's always the good stories that come out of anything like this. Again, not hospitality specific, but just to see if people treated each other like this all the time, it would be pretty amazing to see what we could all get done as a general society, right? So
yeah,
I think that's been pretty incredible to see.
And Hamid, I know, what are you seeing in the Bahamas? Something positive.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think here, the irony is now that they've shut down all the beaches and everything are closed, I mean, the environment's very clean. You know, there's no trash, the sky's clear, I mean, the water's beautiful, and now at least our sea life has a chance to get back a little bit and use this time as some reprieve, because we had problems with overfishing and people bleaching reefs, and I mean, and that's been going on for a long time. So this is the first time, I think, ever, where it's been this clean and peaceful. And so, I mean, it's the only positive thing we can see here on the island, right? Everything else is kind of not so good, but moving forward, at least hopefully we can regain some of our economy through fishing. So fishing's the third largest contributor to GDP, or fishing and farming. So hopefully we can use that to kind of rely on and get things back, I guess, as much as we can. So yeah, that's one positive thing, and then hopefully that can attract tourists back as well, the ones who enjoy being out in the water and the ones who like fishing. And all the islands are pretty much going through a environmental renewal
Mm.
naturally, just because there's no activity, there's no pollution, and so it's prettier now than ever. But
Mhm.
it's quite ironic. So that's the one thing I think everybody's kind of looking at. And besides that, um, I think the government worked very quickly to protect everybody. They
Mm.
didn't waste time. They didn't make excuses. And when they put these rules in place, they were very quick. I mean, come out of 8 p.m. news story, and we have a quarantine or a lockdown for the next day. So they realized the seriousness, and it saved lives. I think if it wasn't for that, so that's positive too. That they acted very quickly and in unison across party lines, and they made things happen. So I
Awesome.
think everybody's happy and relieved about that, even though they don't feel it with the strain. But it worked.
Well, I will be first in line for my conch salad, no fruits, extra spicy.
All right.
I can't wait. Um, and Bill Taylor.
Okay, well, first I echo all the sentiments of everybody that are on the call here today. I think that obviously we as people immediately look at humanitarian type help when these sorts of things happen, and I think that's what brings us all together. Okay, um, I'm excited for the future, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, our industries depend on several other industries, whether it is airlines, whether it is cruise ships, whether it is any form of thing travel related. I'm excited about us all teaming up together and helping each other. The last thing I would say is just take any country in the Caribbean, whether it's the Bahamas, whether it's Jamaica, whether anywhere in the Caribbean that we all live and see and work in and things like that. I would say that the educational process for people that are working, to me, is probably the most exciting, where we can train people in a skill that they may have never ever had the opportunity to learn or understand. And I think that goes to the root of everything, starting from the governments to starting and going to universities and schools and hospitals and things like that. I think at the end of the day, when all this is done, um, our Earth or our version of our Earth, wherever that may be, is going to be a cleaner place because of what we have gone through in this. And again, no one saw this coming. And, we have had to react to it. And as an industry, we are reacting to it. And I'm excited for all of those things for all of us that will help us going forward.
Thank you. Well, if there are no other questions, does the panel have any final thoughts? Anything else to add?
I'll add on to what Bill said. I think
Mhm.
as far as education is concerned, I mean, I've seen that trend as well, and I think part of it is a lot of people um, are not distracted because they can't be, and so they have to be at home, and they have to rethink a whole bunch of things, and just being still for a while. And you learn this in yoga. If you're still just for a short period of time, it's amazing what you can think about. And I think a lot of people, that's what's happening. So naturally, it's gonna encourage some higher level. I started going through some of my IT courses that I put on the back burner and just revamped some of my certs. And a lot of people I know are doing the same. So I think, to your point, I mean, it will be a new environment, and I think it'll be a smarter, cleaner, more adaptable world that we're moving forward in.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your time today. And if we don't have any other questions, we'll say goodbye to everyone. And I just want to thank our panelists, Hamid, Bhatti, Bill Lally, Bill Taylor. And again, if you would like to get involved with Project Positive Planet, you can email us at admin@caribbeanwe.com. And this is a partnership with Well World TV, Caribbean We, and Papilia. And thank you guys. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.